Well, thank you for the very nice words, Oscar. Thank you for being here, and well, thank you for showing up. So either yesterday you didn't party, or you really want to hear about console graphics and hardcore game experience, ironically, at the Casual Connect. So that's kind of cool to be on stage here today. And yeah, we started 8 years ago, and so we were saying we're going to bring console game experience to the mobile platform. Frankly, back then, people had a great laugh about me and our great team as well, because they said, well, we never will have a proper console game experience on a mobile platform, because where should all the power come from? And we were predicting HD graphics, broadband connectivity within less than 10 years. Well, these were the early days with like feature phones and such. If you look at the development of the CPU clock speed on mobile devices, you see this is pretty much when we started, 2004. And to compare that with the consoles, it's like we were starting at the PlayStation 1 level, and you see the CPU speed is ramping up, and we are about to close in with the console generation. However, on mobile, because of battery life, it is unlikely that the CPU clock speed will exceed the current generation of video consoles. It's rather that the GPU performance goes through the roof. So if you heard about Moore's Law, that doesn't apply to the mobile space. So the mobile innovation is at a much, much higher rate than the console and the PC innovation cycle is. Just to compare here is like the iPhone 5 features the same GPU as the current, as the PS Vita does. It just has less cores. So what you can expect is that if the next video console generation comes out, within 2 or 3 years, mobile will have caught up already. And another thing you have to keep in mind is like, from the specs that are rumored about the upcoming console generation, they're going to be supporting full HD. Well, mobile is already beyond full HD. The iPad 3 introduced Retina display, and it was a higher resolution than a full HD TV. So basically, to a certain degree, mobile is already ahead of the upcoming console generation. All right, so we talked about Galaxy Fire, which is indeed our flagship title, and we started with that back in 2005. That's one of the mass market phones that we were targeting back then. It was like Sony Ericsson. It's a very, very small device and has an even smaller screen. So the smallest resolution that we were supporting with Galaxy Fire 1 was 128 by 128 pixels. That fits today into an iPhone, and it's the size of an icon of the app. So just to give you the perspective here. And so obviously a lot of things have changed. Eventually we got these HD graphics quality on a mobile platform. And today, so that's the latest installment of Galaxy Fire 2. It's an HD version, and meanwhile we have produced 2 add-ons. So it seems that there is a great hunger for console content on the mobile space. And just to give you an idea about the quality increasement we had, we took all the assets within Galaxy Fire and did them from scratch as if we were doing a proper Xbox 360 title. So we have about the same poly count, the same amount of textures per mesh, per item, as you would have seen it in a console game. And we're also working on the shaders as you do it on an Xbox 360. So the next step is, as we've seen, the most successful titles on the App Store are connected titles. So obviously, the mobile device is always connected. And we heard about marketing here, we heard about virality. And the best thing is like word of mouth and inviting friends to join your team, your alliances, which is why we were starting on the next Galaxy Fire title, Galaxy Fire Alliances, which we announced on Monday actually, is going to be an MMO RTS. So it's a real-time strategy game where you have to conquer planets and you send fleets to another planet. And to be really effective, you have to work with your friends and go against other clans. So again, we will have the same quality of 3D graphics, but with a different gameplay, a little bit more slow paced, but more on a strategic level. And I also like to lift the lid just a little bit what the future brings maybe in 2 years from now, stuff that we are currently working on. So that is just a screenshot of our latest engine. So we have our own mobile engine, because when we started back then in 2004, there was no engine where you could do 3D games on a mobile platform. So we had to do it ourselves. And today we're in a lucky position that we have the full control over the whole source code. And I would say this is vital if you want to do the last mile. If you want to get to the last 10% of the maximum quality on a mobile platform, you have to have your own tech. While other middleware might be fine, if you don't have a dedicated tech team, you get to a certain level, but after that it's really, really hard because you don't have the control all the way down to the last line of code. So what we see right now here is Abyss 3, and that's actually in-game footage. So this is the quality that the planets will look like in Galaxy Fire 3. And so we spent a lot of time creating new shaders. And back in Galaxy Fire 2, we had beautiful planets. All those planets were hand-drawn. And obviously, if you have hand-drawn planets covering the whole screen, you need a lot of texture to have a great image and like to have it really crisp. But at the same time, that eats up a lot of memory, which is still the biggest constraint. It's not battery. The biggest constraint on mobile is memory, because those devices ship with like somewhere between 256 megabytes and up to 1 gigabyte. So these are the devices you should target today. And then you end up with either video RAM issues if you have textures that are too large, or at the same time, Apple just announced the 128 gigabyte iPad. But you still have to make sure that your game is not too big for somebody who has a 64 gigabyte device. And a game that is really, really large competes with all the music tracks, with all the images and other apps you have on the device. So if your app is too large, if your client is several gigabytes, then it's very, very likely that only a very, very hardcore audience will keep that app on your platform. Back to the technology. Now we have the possibility just taking a few textures to create a multitude of different planets. And we just zoom in, it's still the same image. So this is now 1-to-1, so this is the maximum quality, how close we can approach to a planet within the game. And it renders the sphere and the atmosphere, the clouds. The clouds have a proper cast, a proper shadow on the planet's surface. And these are the properties that we have in the shader and where we can set certain things. So we can animate the clouds, and these clouds not only move just in a circle, so they have different behavior as if there were really stormy weather on the planet. And so that is stuff that you actually do if you do a console title. But meanwhile, on mobile, we are pretty much at the same level. And we're going to see in 2014 that OpenGLS 3.0 will be the next graphical standard that you have to make sure you want to hit. Because at the end of the day, while we're doing this for our fan base, but of course we're also doing this to get featured. And since the start with Galaxy Fire back in 2009 on iOS, these are just some of the features we got from Apple. So we got a lot of love from Apple. We also got love from Google. I'm most proud of the last 3 things here. It's like, that's Galaxy Fire 2 in Chinese, Korean, and Japan. Previously, it's like in the Western markets we have been constantly featured. It was very, very hard with a Western open space game to be featured in Asia. And now we are picked by Apple being free app of the week. Actually, this runs out, today is Wednesday, right? Okay, tomorrow. So you have 2 more days to get that for free. And then we go back to paid. And obviously, if you create that kind of quality, it's very unlikely that you don't get featured. So while we're talking a lot that it's very hard to get featured by Apple, well, actually, Apple is a company that wants to sell hardware. So you need to make sure that if you're in that space, that you create something that is really mind-blowing and just pushing the hardware to the absolute limits. Then you have a very, very good chance to get featured, and the results are incredible. All right, so what are the challenges if you try to replicate a console game experience on mobile? So obviously there's a very high user and media expectation. If you say, oh, we're going to bring a first-person shooter or RPG or whatsoever on a mobile platform. So there are certain expectations from the user, and obviously if you disappoint, then you get like the bad reviews. You might have nice graphics, but if the gameplay sucks, you're screwed. So first, you have to invest into production value, which we just have seen. You have to think about the gameplay, because naturally the mobile platform has different inputs. It has different session times. It's still kind of mobile eats the lunch of console, because I constantly hear that I'm not playing a console game experience while I'm on the bus with my mobile. I think this is the biggest mistake for the console guys, thinking that people playing mobile games just while they're on the go. Within Galaxy on Fire, we see that 70% of the game sessions, people are connected to a Wi-Fi network. So obviously, they're either at home or at the office or at Starbucks, which is not on the go as perceived in like a mobile device. So you have to think about bringing a console game experience, have proper session times. So it's unlikely you should target for a 60-minute session, but still it's not like you have to have a session that lasts only 1 or 2 minutes. So it's fine to go to 5 or 10 minutes, that works. Still, you have to keep that in mind. The next challenge is the business model. Console guys are used to pay $60 upfront for a title, and that's it. And we have seen that the free-to-play model is much more successful on mobile. So if you create a console game experience, you really have to think carefully if the free-to-play model caters, if it works, for an audience that is actually used to pay upfront and is also fine with that, but hates, a lot of people hate in the console space, this free-to-play model is like, okay, it takes longer, and then I have to shortcut by churning out some money. So you need to be really careful about this. It's going to be very interesting how EA is succeeding with Real Racing 3, which is going to be launched very soon. It's a free-to-play title, and you should really watch that, as we will, how that goes with the free-to-play model in an existing fan base that used to pay like $6 or $7 up front. So the premium price tag, that's for a niche audience coming from console. However, free-to-play is much more successful on mobile. We've seen that in the charts. Many console games are story-driven single-player experiences, which are much more hard to monetize with the free-to-play model. And last but not least, we heard a lot about long lifetime value of users in a service, whereas console kind of titles used to be products. So if you create a console game experience, you need to be aware that you have to approach the user in a different way. You have to think in a long term how you can add more content, how you can add more quests, and ideally have a multiplayer experience so people can challenge each other and run this as a service. All right, I think we've got 5 more times. So what we did is like we looked on the App Store, how many titles are actually console kind of style. And if you see, that's a game starter kit from Apple in the US. There was, this chart is from December. And you see there are 4 titles that appeal to the console player, I'd say. So it's Infinity Blade, Dead Trigger, Sky Gamblers, and CSR Racing. In terms of production value, quality, it appeals to console guys. And ironically, there's no known IP from the console space featured in that section here. So as we heard from Google, it's really like the indies are more successful on iOS than the classic publishers are. If you look into the hardcore section, so obviously on mobile there's a hardcore section featured by Apple. So Apple calls that it's a room. And it's really great to be in that feature, because here is where you can charge a higher price, and compared to like all those 99-cent apps or even free. And if you take a look, like the red circled apps are IP that comes from PC or console, compared with the yellow circled apps that are originally made on mobile but have this console game experience. So it's like 50-50 the way Apple picks those titles. And if you look into a very popular category, which is adventures, we took some examples about titles that came from console and were ported over to mobile. And here's a very good example how you should not do it. So we have Lara Croft, probably one of the biggest IPs in the world in the video games business, by Square Enix. And it was just a brutal port. And as you can see in App Annie, this app goes south immediately. And this is an educated guess how much money they made on a monthly basis, taking just the US charts and then extrapolating to the rest of the world. So they may be much more successful in Japan, but I bet they do only 4 figures a month. And so I wonder if they even got the porting cost back. Another one, back from my youth, Sid Meier's great game. It does a bit better than the previous example. However, My gut's feeling is the production quality is simply not good enough to cut the mustard at that point. And even the price change didn't do them that good. So you need to be better than that. So if you're taking a console game that's kind of old, like 10 or 20, even 20 years old, you really need to brush off the graphics and get better than that. Example with Galaxy Fire, a bit misleading because we also have an SD version that does pretty much as good as the HD version, so you double that. But with constant upgrades, price changes, and the last spike you see, that's the spike from the free app of the week promotion we got, and adding in a purchase for credits and stuff, we are hovering in the top 200 grossing charts, which does us 6-digit a month. I'm afraid we're running out of time. Okay, so I got some more, so later on we may talk about other titles. And yeah, I hand it over back to Oscar then.
Thank you, Michael. Sorry to rush you on that. We're just running out of time quickly, and I wanted to make sure we had some chance for the people to ask you a couple of questions. But what I think you should take away from this personally is the quality aspect is an incredibly important factor and will increasingly be so. We're seeing the quality bar for what is defined as the minimum viable product raising so fast that if you're not thinking about creating content in the way that Michael was describing, you're probably going to find yourself in big trouble. And I also think it's interesting because Michael and I often have big debates on whether freemium or paymium or premium works. We are in an evolving process. But enough of me talking, because the whole point of this was to get you guys to ask a question. Does anyone have a question we want to ask? Any volunteers? There, great.
Hi, Michael. You mentioned that story-driven games are hard to monetize.
Where are you?
I'm right here.
There you are.
Hey.
Okay, thanks.
So, story-driven games, hard to monetize. I mean, how many times did you guys hit the wall? What came from that? Can you elaborate on this?
Oh, absolutely. I think, so our biggest mistakes were not to have in-app purchase from the very first beginning within Galaxy Fire, because, I mean, we were coming from the classical model, you pay upfront and that's it. Simply by adding in-game credits without changing that much, far from being good in A/B testing and tracking user behavior, etc., we added, I think, 30% of the revenue on top. Just by having in-game credits, you get your spaceship quicker and your better gear, that's it. So we left a lot of money on the table. And we also should have focused more on the user behavior. So we lose a lot of people in the first 2 or 3 missions here. It's a game design issue. And so if we had known how good in-app purchase works back then when we designed Galaxy Fire, I think we would have done much better. I have to say that this game, this Galaxy Fire, the current version with like on the device 1.2 gigabyte, used to be a 1 megabyte Java game in 2008. It's still the same AI, it's still the same logic for running the quest and everything. So a lot of code comes back from 2008. And you can't change things that much anymore. If you create a game today, you really have to make sure that there's a way that people can spend, if they love your game, $100 a month, and but for stuff that's worth it. And I think that this is the most important thing here. And it's always, you always have not enough developers to do all the stuff you should do.
There was another question over here. Oh yeah.
Hi. If you think about, I mean, you say that one of the biggest challenges when you come to mobile is obviously memory restrictions, especially when you do 3D and everything. Mm-hmm. But if you think about very popular games for the Nintendo DS or for the PlayStation Portable back in the days, a lot of them were 2D as well, and they had this very rich, immersive, and in-depth gameplay experience. But to play them, you had to carry around like 2 or 3 handheld consoles, plus your smartphone, plus your handheld, etc. And yet, you don't really find those types. It would be really great to see those on mobile platforms, and yet you don't find them, or if you do, then they don't monetize. So aside from memory restrictions, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges for us to tell players, look, you can save weight in your bag, you can have rich gameplay experience, just go out and take it, which on the other hand will motivate developers to create those rich gameplay experiences.
Yeah, I mean, we heard it from Google, we heard it from other conferences. Still, word of mouth, virality, and user recommendation is the strongest impulse to download stuff. And I mean, you guys, Oscar, you provide a technology where you can record the game experience and share that with your friends.
With my wallet.
Yeah, we heard great numbers about that. So we actually were talking to Oscar about implementing that kind of technology. What we did in Galaxy on Fire, we call it action freeze. So you have a great scene, you really have a great kill, everything blasts up into space, and then you push pause, you hold the game. Then you can take the camera and orbit it around and make a very, very nice individual screenshot. You can zoom in, zoom out. So this screenshot wouldn't look like all the others. And then you can share that on Facebook. And I mean, this is very subtle, it's very little, but we saw great results here. So our users were kind of competing for the best screenshot in the forums on Facebook, and that helps. And if you create this super quality, make sure that people know about that. I think this is really important. And second to that is, like, as I said, if you have a multiplayer gameplay, make it reasonable that they invite their friends. And it's not like spamming, so I got a new achievement. Well, that's okay, but it's still like, make it meaningful. So I need you. I need your spaceship to be stronger. So you can give your spaceship to me, and while you're offline, I use it, and then we fight together. When you log in back, then you see the results. I think this is the way to go.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Just the quickest question, because I know we've gone over, but is your next game going to be premium, freemium, or paid up front?
Galaxy on Fire Alliance is going to be a freemium.
That's what I thought you'd say. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.